Hi and welcome to Top Global Business Minds eGlobalis interview series. Today, in order to kick off our series of interviews, we have a very special guest. To start with a lot of energy, a lot of productivity and efficiencies, the author of the best-selling book, Getting Things Done, Mr. David Allen is here with us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about his biography and we are going to kick off the interview. David Allen is a productivity and efficiencies top consultant who is best known as the creator of the time management method known as Getting Things Done or GTD. David Allen is one author, international consultant and lecturer, founder and chairman of the David Allen Company. He is widely recognized as the world's leading authority on personal and organizational productivity. His 30 years of pioneering research, coaching and educating of some of the world's highest performing professionals, corporations and institutions has earned him Forbes recognition as one of the top 5 executive coaches in the United States and the world. Other magazines refer to David Allen as one of the world's most influential thinkers for his outstanding programs and writing of time and stress management. The power of alignment, focus and vision, and his groundbreaking methodologies in management and executive peak performance. The Time magazine labeled him first book, Getting Things Done, as the defining self-help business book of its time. David Allen is the author of 3 books, the international best-selling Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, Ready for Anything, and Making It All Work, Winning at the Game of Work and Business of Life. Getting Things Done was published in 28 languages, including German, Portuguese, for sure English, Mandarin, Finnish, Russian, and many others. Therefore, I have the pleasure to introduce you today to Mr. David Allen, best-selling author of Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, managing consultant, top productivity and efficiency, global leader, founder, and chairman of the David Allen Company. David, it's a great pleasure to have you here today. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Delighted to be here, Ricardo.
Thank you very much. Let's start with my first question. One thing that I watch many of your interviews. One thing that strikes me is always you mention about what leads you to write GTD, the book. But I'd like to know your personal perspective about that. What triggers you? Maybe, people have different issues in their lives. So what triggers you personally to write a book, to get things done?
Well, there were probably 3 or 4 major reasons for it. Probably the main reason was that I realized after about 25 years of actually doing versions of this work that it was actually unique and that nobody else had really done it the way I'd done it. And in case I got run over by a bus, somebody would probably figure it out. But meanwhile, I think I needed to write the manual. But Ricardo, it took me, as I say, it took me 25 years to figure out what I'd figured out. Because in a way it was so simple, and I've frankly never had any traditionally formal business education or psychology education. So mine was just personal experience and then a lot of using that and testing it and working with so many people. But I figured all the highly successful big executive people out there had already figured this out and that I was the last guy to learn it. And as I said, it took me a long time to really realize that it was quite unique. And also, I'm not the kind of guy that can just go ta-da and write a book and then hope it works. I really needed to make sure this really was bulletproof. And so literally spending thousands of hours with some of the best and brightest, and sharpest executives and professionals on the planet and having this material without exception absolutely improved their condition. I said, well, I think this really needs to get a bigger audience. And so that's when I decided to take it off my someday maybe list and put it on a real project, which is to get a book out there. And I had some advisors who were advising me in terms of my own small business as I was starting it up a new chapter of it. And they said, look, David, write a best-selling business book. And I went, I don't know how to do that. So So that was quite a big project in and of itself to try to figure out how to do it. It's funny, after you read the book, it seems so simple and it seems so obvious, but it certainly wasn't before it was written. So I guess that's a mark of a good, book or good material, in that it seems self-evident once you read it, but it certainly wasn't, before then.
That's the amazing thing about GTD, that it's very simple. After you read, when you start to read, maybe you get overwhelmed, or so many things to get done, but later on it's so easy. It's not easy as a process as to get involved on that, get engaged, sure, as you mentioned, but it's really, I think it's a great book and great. Did you expect it to happen as happened to you? Like, you wrote a book that could be just a U.S. success, but was worldwide. Did you expect something that would be such big impact in the world?
Well, Ricardo, it's funny. It depends on what kind of day it is for me. It depends on what side of the bed I get up on. If I get up on my sort of, I feel great, I'm in charge of the world kind of side of the bed, then I think, hey, look, there's only 2 million of those copies of the book out there, and there's 6 billion people in the planet. Let's get going. The rest of the world really needs to get this. How come there are only 2 million that have it? The other days, when I get up on the other side of the bed, I'm wondering why anybody would recognize this and even read it. Because in a way, there's as you know, there's so much out there in terms of time management and productivity and prioritization and all that stuff, and personal organization. So I wasn't sure. I mean, to me, as soon as anybody reads it and gets something out of it, that's terrific. I'll get a short story on that. One of the biggest days of my life was the first weekend when the book was published back in 2001. The first weekend it was on the shelves in the bookstores, and I had a woman write to me right then. It sent me an email. She said, "David, I picked up your book. I read it. I took the weekend and implemented it. It changed my life." I went, yes, because up until that point, I wasn't sure that I could put the education into some sort of virtual form. I knew it worked if I sat down and worked with people and had plenty of time to be able to engage with people personally, and I knew how to do that, but I wasn't sure that we could get this information into a virtual format. So to me, that was the first. As long as there's one person who could read the book and get it, that means that that code was broken. So in a way, relatively recently, that made the difference of me saying, well, okay, I think then we can then package this education and try to explore to find a way to distribute this education across the planet. We've seen there's no cultural bias, there's no gender bias, there's no personality bias to this. I mean, it's just basic, real human stuff, for anybody that needs to keep track of more than one thing. And it improves everybody's lives. So I figured, well, I 25 years to figure out what I'd figured out, and probably the rest of my life to figure out how to now distribute it and help people make it stick, and but that's a whole different game and a whole different business I'm in now.
There's a great potential. This book is not. There are many books that you read, business books, that the added value is really you can discuss about, but this is real. It's practical. It's pragmatic. You're not. You cannot say something there that is not going to work. Is working when you implement that, works. So I think that's great value.
Yeah, and I think, Ricardo, one of the reasons I think people resist it a lot too, because it is so immediate. A lot of books you can read that are, in case I have this situation, this will be a good thing to know. Yeah. But getting things done is like immediate. It's like right now. If you got something on your mind, here's how to get it off your mind and get it done with less effort. So in a way, it's inviting that, to your point, it is immediately applicable, right that very second, if you start to do these best practices. And at the same time, quite intimidating, because you can't, it's kind of like once you read the book, you have no excuses. There's no reason to have a thought twice, once you catch the principles.
Yeah. And the only thing that I think that the stuff is the decision of change your habits. Because there are certain guys that you have to change your habits. Some you already have, so it's easier to adapt depending where you are, if you take the book and you adapt yourself. But that's maybe the big challenge here. Oh, I have to do that. I'm not sure. That, so have to.
Well, to be fair, most of the people who would be interested in reading the book are already busy, productive, creative people, which means they already have a 24/7 kind of life. So if you're going to do anything different, if you already have that kind of 24/7 life, it means you have to change something. You got to give up something. It's not like people are sitting out there in a vacuum waiting for something to do. So I understand, that, yeah, and as simple as some of these behaviors are, they are a very big change of habit, especially keeping stuff out of your head. That is such a huge habit for adults anyway to change.
And that's I think also that's a part that's difficult, but it's great the way you presented that. I like it the way you call that water mind, or mind of water.
Mind like water, yes, which I took from the martial arts, that image. Yeah.
Next question, just to clarify something. People that are busy not always are productive. What's your perspective about really productive people? Because you need results. I can be busy in my work, but I'm not getting results, except if you are in biotechnology and you are making research, so you get so frustrated, and that's part of the job. But in other jobs, project management, as executive, as anything that you are doing in life, you can be busy or really making things happen, get things done. What's your perspective about this?
Well, a simple definition of productivity is achieving desired results. So, for instance, if you go on vacation and intend to relax, and that's why you're going on vacation, but you don't relax, that's an unproductive vacation. So I think people have a mistaken idea that productivity means hard work. I mean, I have to work. Well, you might, in order to achieve some results, you might need to work hard in order to do that. But to your point, busy, it depends on what you're busy doing what. Because, a homemaker may be very busy keeping up with 3 young children running around the house. And you could say, well, is that being busy or is that being productive? Well, if your desired result is to raise your kids in a healthy, a constructive way, and it takes that kind of activity to do that, that's productive. So just because somebody's busy does not necessarily mean that they're being unproductive. But I understand your point. The real question would be, what is it that they are committed to actually achieve in terms of a result? And are they achieving that?
So would it be the KPIs against the situation that we are discussing?
Sure. And, it's tricky business. I know everybody has the question about how do you set priorities, but there are multiple levels that we have commitments about. And so when you're driving your car to work, that's being very busy driving your car. Well, how strategic is driving a car? Well, it's very strategic if you need to get from here to there, because there is where you need to go to do what you would consider your priority work. So, the truth is we have as many priorities during the day as you have different activities that you engage in during the day. So the priority game is I think it requires a much greater awareness and understanding of how complex our life is. All of us, in terms of the things we are committed to and what pulls or pushes on us, and what are those things that we intend to achieve. I agree with you that many people let busyness get in the way of them holding a focus on the things that are perhaps more important to them, to be sure. So the idea of speed up by slowing down oftentimes is a very good admonition. Well, stop. Someone said, don't just do something, stand there. So the ability to stop, take a breath, look around, and lift up above the field of activity that you're engaged in, that's absolutely required to be, reasonably productive and sane.
How can we transform ourselves in productive and efficient people? Can you suggest for people that did not yet read the book how to enter in the mindset of become productive? Because to give a perspective for the people, we just spoke about that, but in kind of steps or something that you can think about to help the people that are watching us here in the Eagle.
Sure. Well, probably the main suggestion that I have, and a lot of what the book is about, is becoming conscious of the inventory of all of your commitments at all those different levels. As you know, I'm sure from a consulting background, that if you don't start with current reality and you're not clear about what current reality is, I don't care how clear you are about your goals, you're still going to be on a slippery slope. And especially, you and I may agree that we want to be, over there, but if we don't agree where we are, you'll say turn left, I say turn right, and we'll want to shoot each other, even though we may agree on the goal because we don't agree on current reality. Well, back to the individual, if people aren't aware of what they've committed to, they will always overcommit and overwhelm themselves. Once you become aware of how many projects you really have, how many things you're committed to finish within the next few weeks or months, how many actions that you have that you need to take to fulfill all those commitments, as well as all the aspects of your job you need to maintain and of your life that you need to maintain, as well as any goals you might have. I mean, I've just started to name all the things that probably have people's attention in some way. So a lot of what getting things done is about is, well, here's the secret. It's not really about getting things done. It's really about becoming appropriately engaged with everything that you are doing. You and I right now, think of how many things you and I are not getting done because we're sitting here talking to each other. Right? Tons of things. So you're either feeling really good that talking to me right now is exactly the best and only thing you ought to be doing on the whole planet given all of your commitments, or you're feeling really bad that somehow you got distracted and wrapped up in this, and there's probably a zillion other things you should be doing instead of this.
Really happy to talk with you. So.
I understand, and I'm happy to talk to you too. But the only way that you and I will be able to be present with each other, that is to be optimal in terms of the energy we're bringing to this situation, without having our attention being held hostage by other things, is to have looked at all the other things and say, they'll wait. In other words, we've now renegotiated those agreements with ourselves because it's really, to a large degree, it's all about your agreements with yourself. A lot of them include other people. Yes, I told my boss I would. I told my partner in life I would. I told my kids I would. A lot of them include other people, but they're all really agreements with yourself. And so in order to feel appropriately engaged with all of my agreements, I need to know what they are and to then constantly be renegotiating those. Okay, that's fine. That'll wait. That won't wait. I need to handle that. Then now that's done. Now I'm free for the next 2 hours and I can do X, Y, and Z. And it's very common sense, but very few people are even close to having that inventory, defined and clarified and objectified so that they can sit back and see it. And things are changing so fast. That inventory can change while you and I are talking. We're getting emails right now in our in-basket that are likely to change what our priorities are once we get off this Skype call. So it's coming constantly. So just being able to have a systematic approach to be able to capture and clarify and organize all those commitments and keep that current as things are changing, wow, that's a martial art. So as simple as that sounds, it's not necessarily that easy to do that. So it does require an awareness of what the model is and, to your point, a change in behavior to a large degree. For people. Here's the funny thing is it's behavior you need to do anyway. So it's not like some foreign language you're not familiar with or some new technology. It's really about, all I did over these years was uncover what it is that really works when things really work for us, and then just explore what's the principle that's at play when you do that. And then if you understand that principle, you can bring that principle to bear much more elegantly and completely and consistently than before you were aware of it. So I just made explicit a lot of implicit best practices. And a good example of that, everybody watching or listening to this right now at some point has felt overwhelmed and confused, and they sat down and made a list and felt at least a little bit better, a little bit more focused, a little bit more in control. Well, if anybody reverse engineered, how come I feel better? Nothing changed in the world out there. If you figured out and reverse engineered how come you feel better by getting it out of your head, you'd never keep anything in your head the rest of your life. That's potentially meaningful that you need to potentially think or do something about. It's just that most people have to feel really bad before they do what improves that situation. And I said, look, getting stuff out of your head improves the situation without fail every time, no matter how good or bad you feel. So why not feel better all the time?
And here I have a question for you that actually, my problem with sometimes is to get ready to stop thinking about something. And I have many of my friends that read your book, they told me exactly this point, that sometimes it's hard for me to stand back and relax when I know that I have so many things to get done, and you get overwhelmed, and by so many activities that you have to continue, and one is interdependent of other, so it becomes complicated. How we can solve this part of the methodology that can help the people? For sure, I know that you have a solution for that, but I don't get that.
Well, there are two things that may be going on here. One thing may be going on, which is people don't trust their own systems yet. People sometimes write everything down and say, David, I still think of it when I lie in bed. I say, well, how long have you had all that written down? They say 2 weeks. I say, give yourself 2 months, because some part of your psyche still doesn't trust you've got a systematic, because your system includes your behaviors, not just the content of the system. So your system has to require, for instance, I have to trust, my end basket's right over here, I have to trust that I actually will empty that, on some regular basis. If I trust that I will empty it, I can throw anything in there and not have any attention on it. If I don't trust I will empty that soon enough, even if I throw it in there, it's still going to be on my mind, if you catch that principle. So in order to relieve the pressure, and Baumeister, Dr. Baumeister at the University of Florida co-authored a book called Willpower, where they actually have studied a lot of what I uncovered and found out it actually is true that the mind doesn't actually, you don't have to finish your project in order to get it off your mind, but you have to trust there is a plan to finish, and that plan is in place, and that you or the appropriate people will see the right thing at the right time about that. Now, it could very well be, the other factor is that in order to appropriately engage, sometimes you have to be very busy and you need to be concerned. If the fire alarms go off, you don't want to be, I'm going to be mind like water. Mind like water is actually allows you to then engage and engage and engage and quickly shift your focus as needed. And many times that doesn't look like meditation. That'll look like running a 4-minute mile or, or dealing with something extremely busy and extremely challenging. So there's a difference between worry and concern. If you're worried about the project, that's totally unproductive. You're not making any progress on it. If you're concerned and you then are appropriately engaged in handling that concern, that may very well look like hard work or busy or overtime or dealing with lots of things, because that may be what's required to appropriately engage with that situation. Does that make sense?
That makes a great sense. I never told in that way, but that's I think your explanation is simply great. As the author explaining something else.
Well, see, getting things done in this methodology does not get rid of the challenges in life. If it did, you'd never grow. I mean, come on. Challenge is what stretches us and allows us to express and expand and, develop ourselves as human beings. That's why you lift weights. That's why you come up, we come into this life dealing with essentially what you might call conflict or stress. It's just that what that does is it strengthens the muscle as long as you're appropriately engaged with it, so that then you can handle more. So you don't want to get rid of that. Well, you might want to get rid of that, but I don't think you can. You're not going to be able to get rid of that. So you're still going to have challenges. What I discovered was how do I most optimally engage with those challenges? And you want then to make sure you have a clear head to deal with the fire alarm, or thinking about what you're doing with the rest of your life, or playing with your dog, or managing your project. If I were to coach somebody who's concerned about this big project that they're on, I'd say, well, what's got your concern right now? What has your attention about that? And it's usually because some decision about it has not been made, in that some situation is going on and they haven't made a decision about what exactly needs to happen about that. Or even if they haven't parked the results of that thinking in some appropriate place that they or some person they trust will look at it at the right time. So it's really about how do I get that project onto cruise control, not how do I handle the whole project.
Yeah,
that's the whole point.
I understood that. That's really so. If I understand you correctly, you are saying, let's imagine a project life cycle. If I have the right team, if everything's organized, I plan it well, this is a concern, but I have to be concerned, but I don't need to be worried because I already took all the steps that I will have to,
Sure.
to take care of all the issues that are coming or maybe will appear during a life cycle. So
Sure.
that's what you are saying, in other words.
Yeah, and maybe even a better word is care. As opposed to concern. I care about the project. I care about my kids. I care about my dog. I care about my health. And that's totally appropriate. And so caring about it, therefore I need to do X, Y, and Z. So I think care is a great thing. And you don't want to get rid of care at all. Yeah.
Sometimes we have the tendency to do is to procrastinate things. And in the book you mentioned, I also saw some material in your site about that. And I have two questions about that. What would you suggest to those that are constantly fighting? There are things that you like to do and things that you like less to do. And you're fighting, so this I don't want to do today, so it's easy to procrastinate when it's not urgent. And also how we can learn, because it's connected to procrastinating, at least for me and for people that I know, the fact that we sometimes don't know how to say no. Both are, sometimes I think they are very connected. You know, I can procrastinate things because I don't want to do, or because I don't have time now to do it. But maybe it will be easier for me to say also no for people, look, I cannot do that now, or answer even a phone or answer a mail, etc. How we can improve ourselves, avoiding procrastination, this is a really challenging question because it's really tough to do that for certain people. And for me, many years was very difficult.
No, I understand. Well, you mentioned two things. So let me deal with the latter one that you mentioned first. The latter one where you said, you know, what if I can't say no? Well, again, let me repeat that if you don't know what all of your commitments are, you will always overcommit. So once you see how many things that you have to do, and once you step back and say, what are the really important things that I need to get done out of all that, and do I have the resources to really make that happen, the word no comes a lot easier. Now, I'm a people-pleasing person. I hate saying no as well. I love for people to like me, so I want to tell you yes, anything you ask of me. But I can guarantee over the years it became a lot easier to say no, simply because, you know, and the elegant way to do that is, look, what you're asking me to do sounds great. I don't have the bandwidth to give that the attention it really deserves. So that I really need to validate your request. That's really good. But I also need to validate, in order to be able to manage myself, I can't help anybody else if I'm out of control. So I need to then take control of myself and make sure that's handled. So, you know, that you don't get rid of that challenge of limited resources. That's the definition of management, is the allocation of limited resources. I mean, if you had all the money and time in the world, just wander around and see what shows up. You know, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, that's not the case for the majority of the companies.
Yeah, no, but the whole thing is you're constantly making choices, because every time you decide to do something, you decided not to do everything else. So you're constantly in triage mode. We can't get out of that. We're living that way. You just want to feel comfortable about your choices. That's the whole point. So getting that inventory clear. Back to the point about procrastination, if there's something you just don't want to do, you should first of all ask yourself, what's the purpose of doing it? Because a lot of people feel like they're procrastinating about something that's just old business. They should just take it off their list or move it over to someday maybe. They need to stay conscious about, well, why did you tell yourself to do this to begin with? You know, what's your agreement with yourself that says you should do this? Stop doing it. What's the risk if you don't do this? And if there's no risk to not do it, relax. You know, that's a great equation called, what's the value if I accomplish this, and what's the risk if I don't? Now, if you've got the inventory, I see my 75 projects and my 200 actions I've got about all that, and say, and yes, here's something I still need to do because there is a final game here, a final output that is extremely important to me, and it's still an uncomfortable thing to do. Like have the conversation to fire somebody. You know, those are not easy. You know, come on, things like that. Ultimately, you know, the best thing to do then is, once you know that that's what you have to do, is to then break it down to what's the very, very next thing you need to do. And you need to then make sure that once the outcome is still something you're committed to do, then you need to feel like, I need to be able to engage with some level of control. See, the greatest human fear is the fear of being out of control. I mean, people are killing themselves and each other, as you and I are speaking right now, just to get a sense of psychological control. It's that powerful a driver of negative human behavior. For us normal, sane people, the way that translates is you and I are going to want to avoid, like the plague, hopping into something we don't feel like we can engage with control. So if I don't know how to handle this difficult conversation, I don't know how to handle my taxes, I don't know how to handle this new thing I've never done before, I don't know how to handle writing a book. You know, so it's very easy And as I say, the people who procrastinate the most are the most sensitive, creative, and intelligent people. Because I assume you put yourself in that category, as I do. And you and I can freak ourselves out in a quarter of a second with our minds by seeing this thing and imagining all the terribly horrible things that would happen if it's not done totally perfectly and all the consequences. And we can just freak ourselves out simply by glancing at something. So you have to kind of, intelligently dumb your brain down so it stops doing all that sort of negative future fantasy worrying. Fear, it's a great acronym, FEAR, fantasized experiences appearing real. And so all you have to do is, you can numb it out. You could go drink or go to sleep or something to sort of numb out your brain, or you can break it down to the very next action. Pick up the phone, hit a number, boot the computer, hit a key. If you truly can get it down to that simplistic, it sounds very simplistic, but it truly is determining the next action. And as you know, that's a key component and key behavior is in the getting things done model is whatever you have attention on that you need to accomplish or move on in some way, decide what the very next physical, visible action is. And, those simple little physical actions are usually not that hard. So if you could stay focused on an easily controllable thing that will move the needle toward where you want to go, that's huge. And most people who actually start to implement my model find it unsticks tons for both of those reasons. Helps people clarify the larger inventory, helps you understand and acknowledge how important something is or isn't to you to get done, and then gives you the tools to feel more engaged and more in control so you can get moving on it. That said, a great habit is whatever's most bothering you, do it first. The way I've universalized that principle is what most has your attention right now. Because the reason things have our attention is because we have not put appropriate attention on it. And it's a strange thing that to get things off your mind, you actually need to use your mind, but in a very controlled and a very specific way. What am I trying to accomplish? What's the outcome? Park that somewhere that you'll see appropriately and consistently. What's the next thing I need to do about this? Decide that and park that in some place you'll trust you'll see when and where you could take the action. And then some part of you says, okay, now, even though that's a big thing, it's off my mind. I don't have attention on it because I put the appropriate attention on it. So what I figured out was what was the thinking algorithm that you actually need to go through. It's not about being smarter or transforming yourself. It's about, wait a minute, let me focus or ask this question, answer it this way, park the results here. And I discovered that actually is what gets things off your mind. Because interestingly enough, there's an inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done. Because usually when it's on your mind, it's because some part of you has not put the right thinking on it yet or parked the results in a trusted place.
And when you solve the issues, then you have a kind of, what you mentioned before, the mind of water. I solved something that was something bothered me, I was nervous about that. I solved it, next action, let's go. Then you relax again and you go through the life cycle.
And I think we'll always have tension. There'll always be something that will be pulling or pushing on us. Even if you've got everything quiet, have you fulfilled your destiny on the planet yet that you're here as a human being to do? So, then you've got the big why, the big intentionality, the big project, if you will. If that's true for you at all, and I think it is, for most everybody, that some part of us feels like that we haven't fully shown up yet and that there's still something to express or to manifest or do here in this world. And so that will always create this kind of dynamic tension. If that's not finished yet, there's going to be something that'll be pulling or pushing on you. You just need to start to recognize what is that and appropriately engage with it. See, if I want to be out of the room, I've now created tension because I'm not out of the room, and yet I'm identifying with something that's not true. How do I get out of the room? As long as I get up and start moving that way, then I'm using that tension to positively express and expand myself and to move forward. So we're constantly sort of in a create tension and then relax it modality. That seems to be the nature of kind of who and how we are as human beings. So, all I did was start to recognize, well, how do I get that flow going in a natural way? Once you kind of catch this, then you sort of get the zen of the whole game, and then your tension actually doesn't tense you up. So, hey, I've got attention on that. I'll get to it. That's fine. because I know how to do it. So I think the good news about what I wrote and discovered was I defined the game. Whether you want to play the game or not, it's up to you. But at least knowing the game will get you to relax, because you know there is a way that if it gets bad enough, you can then get it under control. But if people never knew there was that game, there's this existential angst that'll start to take over your life. I don't know if I could ever solve this. And that's no fun.
Executives of all levels and teams members in any work environment have clear goals that will determine their success and failures. What would you suggest to keep achieving your goals even when you have distractions? Why do people often fail in things to get done? Why you think that the people miss the way as they have to achieve the things when you are, especially when you are working for a company? And I saw many people having the tools to do things, but doing wrongly, and eventually getting out of the company because different reasons or different behaviors, etc. What do you suggest here for people that have issues in the daily life in order to get over those situations?
Well, it's a good question. And I think, first of all, the first challenge, perhaps, or accountability is that you manage your own, as I say, your own 10 acres. That you get control and focus of who you are, what your game is, and that you trust that you're managing that as effectively as you can. And then you may have, once you get that clarity, say, I am as actually good and efficient and effective as I can be, and I now have conflicting priorities. Or they're asking me to do something that's not in alignment with where I'm going. Or there's something here. That's when you say, okay, then now I need to make some choices about direction and purpose and goals and values. And that's where you might say, I'm in the wrong place. I'm in the wrong company. A lot of people start to implement GTD and leave the company they're in because they start to get control of their life and go, wait a minute, I don't need to be in a place like this. And some people, hey, I was about to leave the company, but I did GTD, and now I don't need to because now I'm surfing on top of it. I feel much better about it. I've just been acknowledged by, how good I do stuff and got promoted and making more money. And, one thing that GTD is, it will tend to allow you to then move much more elegantly and quickly, if you wish, up the scale. That's one of the problems we have. We do work in a lot of companies, and many times it's the champion, the GTD champion inside the company that brings us in, and then, keeps the fire lit and keeps everybody motivated. The problem is the GTD champions move a lot. They're usually highly upwardly mobile professionally. And so then they move to another company. Now, the good news is then they take us with them to the next company they go to. But in a way, and, it's strange, over the years I've watched, the people who tend to be most attracted to this are the people who need it the least. They're already the most productive people. And I used to wonder about that, and then I realized, well, wait a minute. It's the most productive people that are most aware of resistance and drag in their systems because they're pushing up against it. And what this methodology does is it releases that pressure and that drag. Now, if you're not going anywhere, getting rid of drag may be a drag because there's no reason to get rid of any pressure because I'm not creating any pressure for myself. So it's the people who are really producing the most pressure on themselves because of where they want to go, what they want to do, their bigger goals or ambitions or whatever, that are most aware of things being out of control, or how do I get this email off my big, how do I get these meetings and make them more productive? And so in a way, it is the most productive people that create sometimes the most stress and overwhelm, because they're getting blowback from their own ambition and their own creativity.
Yeah, I think the people that are more efficient, they are always also looking for ways to improve, to get better. Yes. Majority of people today are like that because we have the internet, etc. In the past was maybe more difficult. You depended only on books. Today you have another methods to that. But I think those kinds of guys, and exactly what you said, is they are always searching for something. Oh, I have to get better on that, so let's do it. Let's read that book.